So Nirav was so encouraged by what he sees here that he's talking up the reforms to other cities around the country. Isn't it amazing? The storm that nearly destroys New Orleans. And yet now New Orleans is the beacon for school reform. Nirav represents the virtues that Bill Clinton and I had in mind when we announced the new Presidential Leadership Scholars Program. And we're honored that Nirav was among the first class of scholars. Achieving these results took librarians who salvaged their collections from watering wreckage. Listen, I know something about librarians. I married one. I'm really proud of the Laura Bush Foundation. She's talked about the grants, talked about Pam and Marshall. These are citizens who supported this foundation who, if they'd been in New Orleans, they didn't stay very long. And yet, like many around the country, they care deeply about the future of the city. I hope the students here. I'm really thrilled you're here, by the way, and thank you for staying awake. I hope you realize the compassion of others in helping you realize a good education. It turns out that every good school, a school that's succeeding, and we know it's succeeding. Because we measure against other standards requires strong principles. And there's no doubt that Lexi Medley is a strong leader. I love when she says, if you fail, we fail. The students are product. We don't believe in putting out anything but the best. In order to succeed, in order to lead properly, you've got to set high goals and high expectations. And that's what Lexi and this school have done. As you heard, this school has graduated 100% of its seniors for the past 5 years. Lexi, you've earned our admiration and our gratitude, along with our best wishes for a happy birthday tomorrow. It's the stories of schools like this one and others that we see a determination to rebuild better than before. And it's a spirit much stronger than any storm. It's a spirit that's lifted communities laid low by tornadoes or terrorist attacks. It's a spirit that I saw in New Orleans 10 years ago, and that is very evident today. We see that spirit in the population that has ticked back up as families settle back down. We see it in the tourists who are drawn here not only by this. City's rich heritage but the new hotel rooms and restaurants. We see it in the spirit in Lauren L. E. Duff. As Lauren mentioned Laura and I first met her in 2006 when she was a senior at Easton. She's happy to be back at the school she loved. She was happy to be back at the school she loved at the time. And you know what she told me? She said, "I want to be a teacher." And here she is as a member of this faculty, teaching English. I probably needed her when I was in high school. When asked how students have overcome adversity, Lauren says, "We teach our kids to be resilient. That's in the culture of this city." Lauren's right. The resilience you teach at Warren Easton is the same resilience that this city showed the world in the wake of Hurricane Katrina. On this anniversary, the work of making a stronger and more hopeful New Orleans goes on. You've achieved a lot over the last 10 years. And with belief in success, and a faith in God, New Orleans will achieve even more. The darkness from a decade ago has lifted. The Crescent City has risen again. And its best days lie ahead. Thank you for having me. One phrase origin credited to Michael Gerson and perhaps first used in presidential candidate George W. Bush's address to the NAACP. The phrase is also found notably in President Bush's 2004 Republican National Convention acceptance address and later in his address at the Dr. Martin Luther King Junior Charter School for Science and Technology, marking the second-year anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. To an earlier study, also with favorable findings. Was publicly criticized for a flawed research methodology and later retracted by the Cowan Institute. George W. Bush. Hurricane relief address to the nation. Delivered September 15, 2005, Jackson Square, New Orleans, LA. Good evening. I'm speaking to you from the city of New Orleans, nearly empty. Still partly underwater, and waiting for life and hope to return. Eastward from Lake Pontchartrain, across the Mississippi coast, to Alabama into Florida. Millions of lives were changed in a day by a cruel and wasteful storm. In the aftermath, we have seen fellow citizens left stunned and uprooted, searching for loved ones. And grieving for the dead, and looking for meaning in a tragedy that seems so blind and random. We've also witnessed the kind of desperation no citizen of this great and generous nation should ever. Have to know. Fellow Americans calling out for food and water, vulnerable people left at the mercy of criminals who had no mercy. And the bodies of the dead lying uncovered and untended in the street. These days of sorrow and outrage have also been marked by acts of courage and kindness that make all Americans proud. Coast Guard and other personnel rescued tens of thousands of people from flooded neighborhoods. Religious congregations and families have welcomed strangers as brothers and sisters and neighbors. In the community of Chalmette, when two men tried to break into a home, the owner invited them to stay and took in 15 other people who had no place to go. At Tulane Hospital for Children, doctors and nurses did not eat for days so patients could have food. And eventually carried the patients on their backs up 8 flights of stairs to helicopters. Many first responders were victims themselves, wounded healers. With a sense of duty greater than their own suffering. When I met Steve Scott of the Biloxi Fire Department, he and his colleagues were conducting a house-to-house search for survivors. Steve told me this: I lost my house and I lost my cars, but I still got my family, and I still got my spirit. Across the Gulf Coast, among people who have lost much, and suffered much, and given to the limit of their power. We are seeing that same spirit, a core of strength that survives all hurt. A faith in God no storm can take away, and a powerful American determination to clear the ruins and build better than before. Tonight so many victims of the hurricane and the flood are far from home and friends and familiar things. You need to know that our whole nation cares about you, and in the journey ahead you're not alone. To all who carry a burden of loss, I extend the deepest sympathy of our country. To every person who has served and sacrificed in this emergency, I offer the gratitude of our country. And tonight I also offer this pledge of the American people. Throughout the area hit by the hurricane, we will do what it takes. We will stay as long as it takes, to help citizens rebuild their communities and their lives. And all who question the future of the Crescent City need to know there is no way to imagine America without New Orleans, and this great city will rise again. The work of rescue is largely finished. The work of recovery is moving forward. In nearly all of Mississippi, electric power has been restored. Trade is starting to return to the port of New Orleans. And agricultural shipments are moving down the Mississippi River. All major gasoline pipelines are now in operation, preventing the supply disruptions that many feared. The breaks in the levees have been closed, the pumps are running. And the water here in New Orleans is receding by the hour. Environmental officials are on the ground, taking water samples, identifying and dealing with hazardous debris. and working to get drinking water and wastewater treatment systems operating again. And some very sad duties are being carried out by professionals who gather the dead. Treat them with respect, and prepare them for their rest. In the task of recovery and rebuilding, some of the hardest work is still ahead. And it will require the creative skill and generosity of a united country. Our first commitment is to meet the immediate needs of those who had to flee their homes and leave all their possessions behind. For these Americans, every night brings uncertainty, every day requires new courage. And in the months to come will bring more than their fair share of struggles. The Department of Homeland Security is registering evacuees who are now in shelters and churches. Or private homes, whether in the Gulf region or far away. I have signed an order providing immediate assistance to people from the disaster area. As of today, more than 500,000 evacuee families have gotten emergency help to pay for food. Clothing, and other essentials. Evacuees who have not yet registered. (538) Registered should contact FEMA or the Red Cross. We need to know who you are, because many of you will be eligible for broader assistance in the future. Many families were separated during the evacuation, and we are working to help you reunite. Please call this number, 1-877-568-3317, that's 1-877-568-3317, and we will work to bring your family back together, and pay for your travel to reach them.